1994. 26 years ago. Almost 3 decades since the last Streets of Rage entry with Streets of Rage 3. And now in 2020, we finally have a Streets of Rage 4. When this was announced 2 years ago, my excitement was through the roof. I'm a huge fan of beat-em-ups. Beat-em-ups are my favorite genre of video games. You can put almost any game right in front of me and then an old school beat-em-up right next to it, I'm probably gonna play the beat-em-up. And Streets of Rage was my jam back in the day. I absolutely loved that series. I was 5 years old when the first game came out. So it was a perfect series for me to grow up with. And I've been just sitting around waiting patiently for a 4 to come out. Not that there hasn't been attempts to do it before. There's plenty of homebrew fan-made games out there that carry the Streets of Rage 4 name, and there's the popular fan-made Streets of Rage remake. People clearly wanted a new official entry badly, and we almost had one twice before. There's been 2 real attempts to revive the series and neither of them panned out, for various reasons. Here's one on the Dreamcast, where Streets of Rage 4 was going in a very different direction from the original. It looked like it was going to have this 3D graphics on a 2D plane model, but with a really weird first-person mode added in. I really don't feel this would have looked or felt anything like the series. And then a remake of Streets of Rage was experimented with, going with a full-blown 3D beat-em-up style, very similar to what Final Fight Streetwise ended up being, transitioning from a 2D beat-em-up to a gritty 3D world. This might have been kinda cool, but I feel like games like these are always at their best as just pure 2D beat-em-ups. Old school experiences, and that's exactly what Streets of Rage 4 ended up becoming. Saying this game is good is an understatement. Streets of Rage 4 is way better than anything I could have imagined. This review will have some story spoilers as I talk about the game. Not sure how much that really matters in a Streets of Rage game, but I guess it does need to be said, and I'll be showing some boss fights to illustrate my points too. The story of Streets of Rage 4 takes place 10 years after the events of Streets of Rage 3. Mr. X is dead, and his crime syndicate was destroyed, and now Wood Oak City is in crisis again. There's a new criminal empire in town that took its place, and it's led by his 2 children, the Y twins. There's a crime wave in the city again, and even its top officials have been corrupted by the Y twins. Sounds like an ordinary reason to take to the streets and beat up crime. One thing about the Streets of Rage series is that the story always got a little more ridiculous as the series went on. I mean, originally it was just a cops versus bad guys thing, where you just go to the streets and you beat up crime. And then by part 3, they added a ton of robots. Mr. X was a brain inside a container, Mother Brain style. And this one adds its own share of craziness too. This time, Mr. X's children, the Y twins, are using mind-controlling sound waves to control the city and brainwash people. They built all these super speakers around the city, and DJ Kawashi is playing a concert that will spread the sound waves all over the city, effectively controlling everybody. And it's up to Axel and his friends to stop the concert from happening and then end the Y twins. It's all very absurd. You can't help but love the story. I love that music is essentially part of the story itself, because Streets of Rage has always been known as having an amazing soundtrack. At least for Streets of Rage 1 and 2. I know that 3 has its fans. I never really enjoyed the music in that one. They tried a lot of new video game music techniques, while technologically was impressive, but it just never sounded or felt like Streets of Rage to me. The music in Streets of Rage 4 is implemented really well, working to get your heart pumping with the action, and it just fires you up to press those buttons at a fast rate. Let me show you a segment from the final boss, for example. Again, spoilers. You're battling the Y twins at the same time, but at one point, one of their health bars gets low enough to escape. It makes it seem like the battle is over, but nope, one of them jumps into a giant robot, and as the robot rises slowly in the background, the music starts slowly amping up with it. It's perfect. Another notable scene was the elevator fight as you're climbing the Y twins building. You're trapped inside an elevator rising with the glass windows breaking on the sides. Enemies are pouring in. The music just hypes you up. You want to kick ass to this beat.
Sword strike!
The music in the game is very high energy, fits the aesthetic perfectly. I loved it so much that I even ordered the limited run vinyl, I had to have it. But a game can have an excellent soundtrack and play like crap. This is not that game. The gameplay flows as beautifully as the sound. Streets of Rage 4 is a game that anybody could pick up and play. If you are a veteran beat-em-up gamer, sure, you could pull off some awesome combos and really take advantage of enemy placement. For example, if you're surrounded by bad guys, you can attack in front of you and behind, switching attacks back and forth on the fly, hurl your enemies behind you, hitting other enemies with their bodies. But at its core, the game mechanics are very simple, as they should be for a beat-em-up. There's a jump button, there's an attack button, a special attack button that uses some of your health, and if you have stars shown under your health bar, which by the way you pick up more of them throughout the stages, you can unleash a super special attack, different for each character. Just like old school Streets of Rage, there's various weapons laying around, and I didn't know until after I'd captured all this footage that you can actually turn all the health items in the game into different food items under the options menu. Instead of apples, you can have a pizza slice, you could even have a healthy salad for you vegetarian gamers out there, or a cheeseburger if you desire. Graphically, the game's beautiful. I'm so glad they decided to stick with the 2D beat-em-up style instead of forcing it into a 3D world, and everything has that hand-drawn look to it that really shows off the skills of the artists. In some sections, the background even looked like they came right out of a comic book page, and new to the series, I should probably say improved. We have cutscenes that progress the story forward. 3 kinda did that, but it was more just faces with scrolling text. You had some little sections here and there. Here there's full-blown illustrations, again very much like a moving comic book. Technically, there are a ton of playable characters, since you can unlock pixelated retro fighters, but those are extra unlockables that you get by gaining a certain amount of points, so I'll focus on the main playable characters. Fair warning here, Adam Hunter is in the game, but he's not playable right at the beginning. I was panicked at first because I wanted to play as him right away, but thankfully he's not that far into the game. You unlock him pretty quickly. I love the animation. That's one complaint. Those are very bouncy breasts. Oh, I don't get Adam right away? I don't get Adam immediately. Come on. Yeah! Oh, I'm playing as Adam, if I can. Adam unlocked. Very cool. There's a character for everyone in here, and although they all control the same, they feel significantly different from each other. I'm usually an Axel player. He's strong, he's all around a balanced fighter. I've always seen him kind of as the main character of the series. Adam was fairly similar in that context too, but Blaze became my favorite character to use in this game. She's a little weaker, but her attacks are so fast that she can dispatch a group of enemies surrounding her with flashy combos. She could be devastating. I've always been a fan of those very fast, agile characters, so she's right up my alley. And then there's 2 newcomers, Adam's daughter Cherry. She was a little too fast for my playstyle, and her attacks are fairly short range, so you kind of have to be right up in the enemy's face to hit them. As I was doing combos with her, I found myself accidentally dashing around, missing hits, but her special attacks are kind of cool, revolving around her guitar, which goes right in line with the musical theme of the game's look, feel, and story. Floyd is an absolute powerhouse. I've never been a fan of these huge tank characters because they're always very slow, and Floyd is no exception. He moves like a turtle, but he hits hard. And of course, he fires a giant laser too. But again, we have our own biases as players for which kind of characters we enjoy playing as. For me, Blaze was perfect. For others, they're going to find Floyd's slower and stronger approach more attractive as a player. The game does encourage you to try all the characters and play through with each one at least one time, since there are trophies for beating the entire game with each character on single player mode. And of course, if you decide to play with friends, you can do that too. There's 2-player online, 4-player local co-op. As far as difficulty, it can get a bit crazy later in the game, especially on the hardest difficulty setting, which is what I played through on the first time. Enemies are larger in number, forcing you to think quickly and attack non-stop, and of course they hit harder. I learned later in the game where I fought kind of 2 mini-bosses at the same time. Players on normal mode were only facing one of them. And if you want to go for an even bigger challenge, there's Mania mode, where a ridiculous amount of enemies come at you in large hordes. It's relentless, but it's extremely satisfying. It's a ton of fun. You will get beat up severely in many areas. One of the toughest enemies that made my life miserable were these biker chicks named Sugar, Candy, Caramel. They had various names. These little mini Missy Elliots, as they came to be known on my stream. They take a ton of damage, and they charge at you, often from off screen. I absolutely hated them. But yes, on the harder challenges, that's what happens. I love that these higher difficulties are truly hard because it caters to multiple audiences. For more casual players, you've got your easy modes, and for the more hardcore crowd, you could pump it up to Mania mode and have a true challenge. That was one of my complaints earlier this year with Resident Evil 3 Remake. I know it's a completely different game, but the thought process still applies. The difficulty levels in that were neutered a little bit for the hardcore crowd to make it a little bit more accessible to casual players. I understand why, but it's great having a game like Streets of Rage 4 that draws in new players and still has those crazy modes available for the rest without sacrificing the challenge factor. And there's also some really weird subtle humor in the game that I'd like to mention because I'm surprised so many people I've talked to completely missed it. In the art museum stage, there's a scene where something very strange shows up in the background for some reason. Are you guys seeing what I'm seeing? Does someone want to confirm if that's what I think it is? It says shipping to Paris. Anyone want to take a guess what that looks like? Okay, so it's not just me. I was like, let me not say that and sound like a pervert, but it's not just me. It's in fact a giant butt plug. Why? As a kid, I never in a million years thought I would say that there would be a Streets of Rage 4. As an adult, I never thought I would say that there is a Streets of Rage 4 with a giant butt plug in it. That's right, there is a giant purple butt plug in Streets of Rage 4. After some internet research, the mystery was solved. I don't know the details as to why, but apparently an American sculptor made an inflatable sculpture he called Tree that looked like a butt plug, and he pissed off right-wing protesters in Paris when it was blown up there. For some reason, Streets of Rage 4 pokes fun at this entire situation. The levels have a great variety to them too. You go from city streets, biker bars, a huge music festival, to a crashing airplane, and then a super secret island, and the bosses have just as much variety to them. Some old faces return like Barbon outside the biker bar, and fan favorite Shiva, Streets of Rage Liu Kang, which was one of my favorite battles in the game. One of the coolest new boss battles was against the DJ in the concert. It felt like I was transported into almost a Tron-like universe, and I love that movie. Another new boss that I absolutely love the design for is a cop that thinks she's on the right side of the law. She's this big Amazon-looking chick, and I think her design would have made a really cool Sonja Blade redesign for the Mortal Kombat series. She easily became one of my favorite characters in the game, and I could see her being a playable character in the sequel. Not only that, but she also had one of the best throwbacks to the 90s Streets of Rage that they could have possibly thought of for old school gamers. You remember your special attack in Streets of Rage 1, where a police car drives up and launches a hail of destruction at your enemies? Now she has that special move and uses it on you. It was so cool seeing this make a return in some form, and now it's twisted to be a weapon against the player. But that's not the only reference to the past. Clearly the developers know their pop culture and Sega references. In the sewer stage in the background right here, painted in the back, there's 4 very specifically colored turtles and a rat. Also, not to mention the bright green ooze throughout the level, clearly all Ninja Turtles inspired. In the same level, there's also mushrooms painted in the back, pipes with flowers growing out of them, very Mario-like. Joe Musashi from Shinobi, very clearly making an appearance right here in the background also. And it's a well-known fact that Streets of Rage was Sega's answer to Final Fight. One of the bosses is the police commissioner and an older man that is incredibly physically fit for his age. I couldn't help but think this was some sort of reference to Hagar from Final Fight. And inside the police station, look at that. A cop with some futuristic looking uniform, and his name is Murphy. Could that be you, Alex Murphy, aka RoboCop? It's so cool, and even Rue the Kangaroo from Streets of Rage 3 makes an appearance in a cameo as a bartender. If you find a taser in the levels, also make sure to use them to attack arcades in the background. Those warp you into secret levels, which are retro boss battles. So much love and passion is put into this game that honors the original Streets of Rage series, while at the same time creating something new and fresh. Honestly, I tried thinking of flaws, things I would have improved to make a better game with Streets of Rage 4, but I just couldn't think of anything. As an old school Streets of Rage fan, I could confidently say that what's been delivered here is an absolute masterpiece. I can't recommend it enough, and while I've been working on this review, it's been incredibly difficult to not pick it up and start playing again. Have you played Streets of Rage 4 yet? And if you have, what are your thoughts on it? Leave me your opinions in the comment section below. I'll catch you guys later.
Since you made it to the end of this video, I assume you enjoyed it, so why don't you go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any new content. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, links in the description below, and if you'd like to support the channel, you can join my Patreon or become a channel member. This is Fabian, I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.